This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending May 1st, 2023. Case file number 1077, written by Zandir101, The Literal Elephant in the Room. This was back in the early 90s. I think it was 92 or 93. We were living in a very small town in Texas. I had been learning to play the piano for a while and was at a recital that was taking place at a church. I remember it being packed with people, all families and relatives wanting to see their kids play the piano. I was standing in a room off to the right of the stage where a bunch of kids were waiting for our turn. As I watched the other kids play the piano and finish, I watched several of them walk into a door behind the stage in plain view of the audience, so I figured that was where I was supposed to go after I performed. So once it was my turn, after the shock of seeing all those people, I played my piece, Ode to Joy, and stood up, took a bow, and as everyone clapped, I walked to the door where I saw other kids go. Now here is a glitch or whatever. Once I opened the door, I saw the strangest thing, and to this day I cannot find any rational or logical explanation for it. It was a pretty decently sized room, kind of like a half-normal classroom, and in the middle was, and I am not even joking, an elephant. At least that's what my mind thought, with all kinds of weird colorful sashes, tinsel, or metallic streamers, all in every color imaginable. And there was a kid to the right side of it standing on a ladder, and another behind, probably standing on a ladder as well, as if they were the ones putting the streamers or whatever on the elephant. There was no other exit in the room, and no way to get an elephant or whatever it was in there. I know I saw several kids go into this door, but only two stood there, and they were looking at me as if I wasn't supposed to be seeing this. It only lasted a few seconds, but that image has been ingrained in me since. I shut the door. The audience was laughing, but I wasn't embarrassed, just extremely confused. Interestingly enough, there is a video of all this from my dad's perspective in the audience. Of course, you don't see what I saw in the room, but you can clearly see the confusion and shock on my face. To this day, both my parents remember me telling them, and it's been a mystery to me ever since. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1078, written by Asexual Ninja, Parallel Universe, or Payment Error. Early last month, I went online to pay a bill, like I've done for years. I get to the last page before finishing, and the webpage freaks out, with a multitude of display issues before finally receiving an error message. After several attempts to pay, I give up, assuming the site is having issues. I go back 2 days later and pay my bill, and it goes through normally with me getting my usual text and email notifying me I paid. I'm very confused a few weeks later when I check my email and find a notice from the company whose bill I paid, with a semi-threatening email saying the bill is due that day, and do I need to set up a payment plan? I've been dealing with this company for almost a decade and have never been late in paying. I checked my credit card account, and there's no record of me paying, nor are the text or email I received still in my records. I pay the bill and chalk it up to a senior moment on my part. Last week, I got one credit card bill. It says I never paid my last bill, so now I've got that bill to pay plus the interest. I find my previous bill, open but with the invoice in place, in my living room. Here's why I'm posting. I'm physically disabled and can't drive, and I always pay that credit card bill in person after they flucked up my payment years ago. A family member always takes me to my credit union to pay that bill, and like me, he remembers us going down to pay the bill they say I never paid. He and I even remember a conversation we had on the way down to the credit union, and going grocery shopping afterward, and yet the bill is unpaid, and the bill is in my possession still. Bonus file written by Santiago de la Vega. I had a near-death experience at 15. This is what I saw. I was staying in the hospital after a concussion at 15 years old and landed on my back and head on concrete. I had been out for a few days, only waking for short periods and not able to keep food or drink down. They gave me multiple CAT scans as I wasn't coming to as expected, and they thought I was badly brain damaged. My hospital bed, I was told later, as I have no memories of the visit except for when I was rolled out in a wheelchair, had the side rails up, and I was somehow strapped in as my equilibrium was flucked up, and I couldn't get out of it without nurse assistance. Except I did get up. This is hard to write. It's just so hard to explain the feeling of this moment. I got up, stepped over my mom who was sleeping on a mat on the floor, and walked to the window to see this amazing view of the hills cast in the early dawn light. I looked at the cars way down in the parking lot, the trees behind that wall, the houses and roads and nature leading to the hillside. I felt, I guess, reset. No pain, no memory, no idea why I was there or where there was. I knew it was me, the way you do, but all the stuff that would normally have been running through my head was absent. I felt completely lucid, still, fresh, new, and very much at peace. I never felt that way before or since. Drugs never come in with such clarity. Except I didn't get up. I couldn't have. It wasn't possible. Yet I know to my core, in the way you feel yet can't describe in words, that I saw what I did. And I know that it was there, awake, looking out of that window at one of the clearest visions my eyes have ever witnessed. With this incredible feeling of redemption, renewal? I don't know, but it felt incredible and so true to my human being. I don't know. I remember it like a one-man alien abduction with no rear probing. The next few weeks, I needed help walking, eating, etc. And it was months before I was okay again. I still have minor equilibrium issues 20 years later. I was at the hospital with a friend recently and saw the view from the same floor, but on the wrong side. Chills, man. I feel like maybe that was the first time I became aware of my soul. But everyone experiences that, and most don't need concussions to get there. Case file number 1079, written by Unreality11. The glitch that saved me. $4.70 worth of loyalty bucks. In 1996, I had just dropped out of university and was moving to my home parents' place. My tail was firmly between my legs. I had almost no money and no job prospects. Basically, I was screwed. I had an old Jeep Comanche with all my belongings in the back and 200 miles to go. I borrowed $20 from a friend for gas and started the trip. I got to a point that was 30 miles from home and was empty. I pulled into a gas station/rest stop and sort of cried for a minute in my truck. I needed $5 for gas to make it the rest of the way and had nothing. There was no way I would call my dad and ask for help. He was already so disappointed in me. After a minute, I started searching around my truck for change, anything. I opened the glove box and there were these papers, loyalty bucks, for a gas station that I never used. It turns out it was the exact gas station that I was stopped at, $4.70 worth of bucks. I found another $2 and change, put $6 in the gas tank, and bought a Coke. I made it home. Fast forward 20 years later. I had sorted out my crap and I'm a lawyer now. That gas station hired me as their outside counsel. I got to tell the story to the president of the company. Bonus file, written by Anonymous. The haunting of the historic Coffeehouse. This happened to me several years ago while I was living in California, working a great job in a downtown coffeehouse. I loved everything about that job. I worked with fantastic people, and our local shop was located in the city's historic district in a very old, very beautiful building that had once been a hotel in the 1800s, but had since been converted into apartments, lofts, and of course, the big coffeehouse on the main floor. Being an early birdie and living only a couple blocks away from the coffeehouse, I was always scheduled to work the opening shift, which started at 4:15 a.m. It was the most unpopular shift, but it happened to be my absolute favorite one because I love walking to work in the quiet of the early mornings as the rest of the city was sound asleep. Normally, downtown was quite loud and busy, full of people and constant activity. But in the early hours of the morning, it was still and silent. And I felt as if I was the only person in existence walking through a ghost town. Every day, I arrived about 10 or 15 minutes early for my shift and would wait for my manager on the patio outside of the shop. It was always just the two of us working that early shift, and my manager was often running a little bit behind and never arrived before I did, but I didn't mind it at all. I liked to spend some time by myself on the patio outside of the darkened shop, gathering my thoughts while I waited for him to walk up with his keys to unlock the doors. One morning, as I was walking to work and approaching our building, I noticed that the coffeehouse was brightly lit up, as all the lights were already turned on and shining through the store's giant glass windows. I was about 10 minutes early that morning, so I was very surprised to see that my manager had arrived before me and had already started opening up the shop. I walked up to the glass door and pulled on the handle to let myself in, only to find that it was locked shut. That wasn't really unusual, as we often kept the doors of the employee entrance and main entrance locked while we got everything ready for the day and went through our morning procedures until 5 a.m., which was our official opening time. What was unusual, though, was a sound of music I could clearly hear drifting through the speakers inside the store. This was during the holiday season, so we were playing Christmas music throughout the day, but never turned it on until about 9 in the morning or so, out of respect for all the tenants living in the apartments above us. But on this particular morning, I could hear the Christmas music already playing its familiar loop at a rather high volume inside the store. I thought it was odd, but decided that maybe my manager was just feeling extra festive that day and wanted to listen to some tunes while we worked. I knocked on the employee entrance door and waited for my manager to come and let me in. I looked through the glass and watched for him. He didn't come, so I knocked again and waited some more. He still didn't appear, so I knocked again and again. I then walked to the main entrance doors and tried knocking on those with no luck. I checked my watch and saw that I had 5 minutes until I needed to clock in. I knocked again, much louder this time, and looked inside through the glass door for any signs of my manager. And that's when I heard the muffled sound of voices coming from the back of the store where the kitchen of our coffee shop was located. At that quiet, early hour in the morning, every sound seemed to be amplified, and what I could distinctly hear was 2 male voices talking and laughing together. That was very unusual, as I had mentioned before that it was normally just me and my manager who opened up the shop, but I figured someone had probably just needed to pick up an extra shift. I knocked yet again and continued to listen to the sounds coming from the coffee shop. The men kept talking and laughing loudly. They seemed to be having a great time. In addition to the music and the talking and the laughter, I began to hear the sound of clanging dishes and also the sprayer of the 3-compartment steel kitchen sink being turned on and off, which was very, very unusual, as there would have been no dishes to wash before the store had even opened. I was also confused as to why my manager, and whoever was with him, were in the kitchen in the back of the store, because so much of our opening procedures, setting up the pastry case, brewing the coffee, preparing everything for the espresso machine, were done at the front of the store, where I was waiting to be let inside. At this point, I was getting a bit irritated as I was supposed to start work in just a few minutes, and I needed to punch in on our time clock. I hated clocking in late for work. I dug out my phone and dialed my manager's cell number. He didn't pick up, so I dialed the number to our coffee shop instead, and the 2 phones inside the shop, one in the back office and one up front by the register, started ringing. Once, twice, 3 rings and no answer. Now 4 rings, and 5. I hung up and immediately dialed again, annoyed that they were making such a racket in there with the music and all the talking and the laughter that they probably couldn't even hear the phone at all. Just as before, nobody answered. I hung up and redialed the store for the 3rd time. The phone rang and went unanswered, so I banged on the door yet again to no avail. I looked at my watch. I was officially late for work. As I was standing in front of the locked door with my phone against my ear, becoming more and more irritated, I noticed a pair of headlights reflecting in the glass rolling up behind me. I turned around and saw something I did not expect at all. It was my manager. "I'm so sorry I'm late," he said as he climbed out of the driver's seat and shut his car door and hustled up to the shop's entrance. "I tried to get here as fast as I could," he said, as he moved toward me and fumbled with his keys trying to find the one to the shop door. "You're mad," he said. "I can tell. I'm really sorry." Completely confused, I put my phone away and turned to head into the store with him. And that's when I lost my breath for a minute. The coffee shop was totally dark. None of the lights were on, not a single light, and it was dead quiet. The Christmas music had stopped, and so had the voices and laughter. All of the loud noise had disappeared. Every sound I had been listening to just seconds before had suddenly vanished. "I promise I'll be here on time tomorrow," my manager said as he fit his keys into the lock. "I'll even be early. You'll be shocked." Little did he know that I could not possibly be more shocked to see him than I was at that very moment, as he opened the door to the silent, completely empty coffeehouse. I was speechless. Case file number 1080, written by Half Infinity, the Pale Lady of the Desert. Once, my mom and I were driving to Las Vegas from Santa Clarita. We were just passing Barstow and on the I-15. It was right about high noon and very hot. Not a cloud in the sky. She had a fancy Lexus at the time, with a touchscreen console on the dash that could play DVDs while driving. I remember we were on a long stretch of road, with a lot of space between cars on the highway. 1 minute, we saw nothing ahead of us, and then all of a sudden, a woman was walking across the highway right in front of our vehicle. My mom swerved behind her and barely missed her. She pulled off to the shoulder, and we looked behind us, and we saw her go all the way across the highway, including westbound traffic. Then she turned around and walked all the way across again, each time nearly getting clipped by an unsuspecting and oncoming car like ourselves. At one point, a semi-truck almost hit her head-on by missing her literally by 1 step. Each step she took was a steady and confident step, looking ahead of her and never batting an eye to any oncoming traffic. She was barefoot, mind you, and walking on the boiling asphalt with zero sense of urgency. So my mom calls 911 and we're directed to the highway patrol. They say they've received numerous reports and they're headed out to it. My mom decided after hanging up to slowly reverse down the shoulder to get a better look and see if she's okay. Yes, I know, stupid in more than one way. As we get to a spot behind her now, she's crossed the highway and is now in front of our vehicle. This part I will never forget. The woman slowly turns her head and looks at us and is now slowly but steadily walking towards our car. She was white as day in every way. White nightgown, pale, dry, wrinkled skin, white hair, and the palest bluish-gray eyes I've ever seen, and barefoot again. Almost looked like a Walking Dead version of Rose Dawson from Titanic. I was in the passenger seat, which was on the shoulder, when my mom made eye contact. She froze. Absolutely shut down. I remember the woman walking so close to my door, I could barely see her eyes make contact with mine. It looked as if she was blind and lifeless, but could not just see me, but see into and through me, like into my soul. I went cold immediately. She reached for my door handle, and I remember screaming at my mom to punch the gas, and without hesitation, she came quickly and we peeled out of there. In the back window, I saw her watch us speed off, and then continued across the road again. A mile down the highway, we called highway patrol again to see what happened, and they didn't have a clue what we were talking about, and said they got no reports of a woman crossing the highway. My mom to this day still doesn't remember the time between when we reversed to when we dipped out. I have no idea what happened that day, except for what I witnessed and experienced. Case file number 1081, written by Lord Onion Rings. Lunch and credit on repeat. This happened with a group of about 15 family and friends when we went out to get lunch. My one friend and I decided to cover lunch for the people our age since one of the guys just lost his dad. The waiter brings back our cards after splitting the bill. Everyone at the table saw me put the card away in my wallet before signing the receipts. After taking care of the tip and everything else, I couldn't find my card. At this point, everyone is confused because they saw the waiter hand me back my card and I put it back in my wallet. We searched the whole section we were sitting in and looked between every crack, but still could not find it. I finally gave up and decided to cancel the card. But right before I did, the waiter brought back my card and handed it to me the exact same way he did before. At this point, everyone at the table is freaking out and confused because we can't explain what just happened. It's almost like we stepped back in time and replayed the events that had just happened. I'd say that I stepped into the future, but that's unlikely since one of my friends casually said that it was a glitch. We were all freaked out about it, and we still can't figure out what happened, but we just kinda accepted it. Case file number 1082, written by I Heart Chimp Sandwiches, encountering my doppelganger at the supermarket. This happened to people I know, not to me directly. A woman who works with my mom was out doing her grocery shopping one night and ran into me at the supermarket. She told my mom about the encounter the next day and asked why I didn't recognize her, as we saw each other every few weeks when I'd go and help her with any heavy lifting at their store. My mom confirmed that it couldn't have been me, as I was home. The woman also mentioned feeling oddly nauseous during the interaction. I was about 16 or 17 at the time. Another woman I know said she didn't know I walked through the park near her. Dumbfounded by her observation, I listened as she explained that she'd seen me every so often after work, walking briskly through a large park, which I do know of but have only driven past, as if I was exercising. She said I walked close to her the previous evening, and she was going to speed up to catch up with me and say hello. But as she started to feel ill, she slowed down and then sat on a bench for a few minutes. By then, she'd lost sight of me. This happened about 3 years ago, and both occurrences were miles apart. It happened when I was 20. I was living on campus on the ground floor of a 3-story building. There were only 36 people in the building, so I knew everyone by sight at least when this happened. A new guy moved into the 3rd floor. We'd exchanged pleasantries and I knew his name and what floor he lived on, but not much else. I was coming out of the front door one morning, and he was coming down the stairs. "Oh, I just saw your sister going up the stairs." I asked him what he meant, and he said, "Your sister, she's here all the time. She wears her hair the same as you." I used to change my hair a lot. At the time, it was halfway down my back, and the fire truck was red. There was nobody on campus with hair like mine. I noped out and went back inside. Case file number 1083, written by Icy0706. How a door turned my peaceful night into a nightmare. I have 3 stories that really stand out to me, and as far as explainability, I can't explain any of them. But one is the winner as far as scaring the crap out of me. They all involve doors. The first one. In my teenage years, I lived in a townhome owned by my then stepdad, who freely admitted he thought the place was haunted. He was self-employed as a sound equipment installer and often would come and go during the day, and my mom worked 9 to 5 at a law firm. It was summer break, but I wasn't driving yet. I spent a lot of time outside, and this was before the time everyone had a cell phone, so I'd often take our cordless home phone outside with me. I went outside one day and realized I'd forgotten the phone. When I tried to go back inside to get it, the door was locked. Not the handle, which I may have written off as something I accidentally did on my way out. No, it was the deadbolt. The handle freely turned, but the deadbolt was engaged. The deadbolt that requires a key to unlock from the outside, which I did not have. I stood there dumbfounded for a few minutes. Nobody else was home, and the only other entrance to the house was a set of sliding doors in the basement that was always locked. What the fluck just happened? I kept trying to open it like an idiot for a while, before finally resigning myself to borrowing the neighbor's phone and calling my stepdad. He was in town, and after asking me if I was sure 1,000 times, he came to unlock the door. I'll never forget him saying, "Yep, the deadbolt was completely thrown. I can't explain that." I spent the rest of the afternoon inside, trying to recreate the situation. I slammed the door shut so many times in an attempt to get the deadbolt to wobble and lock itself, but it never did, and honestly I didn't expect it to. Second experience, same townhouse. I was now driving and often stayed late after school as I was in theater and had practices. This afternoon, I had about 30 minutes between class and practice, and I drove home to get a snack. When I got there, my mom was at work and my stepdad's van was gone, so I assumed he was gone as well. The door was locked. Now when you walk into this home, right in front of you to the left is the kitchen, the right is my bedroom, and the middle has a staircase going downstairs. I unlocked the door, came inside, and turned into the kitchen with my back to the staircase. As I was making a sandwich, I heard someone downstairs. I turned back around and the staircase door was open, the stairwell light was on, and someone was clearly downstairs. At the time I thought, wasn't that door closed when I got here? But I also rationalized because my stepdad's van was a cargo van and it wasn't uncommon for someone to borrow it to haul things. So I assumed he was home, his van was borrowed, and went to the top of the stairs. I stood there, looking down the stairs, eating my sandwich, and almost said something. The words were almost out of my mouth, but something stopped me. I still don't know why I didn't yell, "Hi, Jay," down the stairs. Instead, I turned around and left. I left the door unlocked because he was home, right? When I got back from practice, my mom was mad at me because Jay said he came home around 5 p.m. to an unlocked house. He had a lot of expensive equipment in the basement. I was to always lock the door. I tried telling her what I'd seen. He was home at 4. She said he wasn't. I swore he was. Something was home. My brother believed me, but my mom never did. Third experience. I lived in a crappy trailer in my early 20s when I was poor, with 2 young kids. It had 2 bedrooms, which I'd given to the kids and slept on the couch in the living room, which was in direct line of sight to the front door. I put the kids to bed around 9 p.m., and I always locked the door. Always. I still, to this day, clearly remember locking both the handle and deadbolt and checking to make sure it was fully locked before taking a shower. Eventually, I fell asleep. I woke up suddenly around 3 a.m. on high alert. As my eyes cleared and I started thinking sensibly, I realized I was staring into my street. My front door was wide open. Not like, oh, it's a little open or cracked, or I didn't quite close it all the way and a strong wind came along. It was fully open, like a 90-degree angle here. Plus, I had a glass storm door that was fully closed and latched, blocking any wind we might have had, which we didn't have any anyways. I got up and walked to the door to close it, and that's when I lost my crap. Y'all, the deadbolt was still in the locked position. It was fully turned to lock, sticking out into the living room air for God and everyone to see. Have you ever had those moments where you swear there's ice in your veins? That was it for me. I've never been scared like that in my life. In a closed door, you can't even turn the deadbolt to fully locked without it being lined up in the door jamb properly. I knew I'd locked the door, and yet here it was, staring at me in the face. I didn't sleep without the lights on for a week. Case file number 1084, written by Groundhog Seed Clover. Strange coincidence or freak accident. Physics lab experiment goes wrong. In my physics class last year, we were split up in groups and working in a lab. A guy at another table let out a yell while extending his arms and fell headfirst off his chair. The very second in between his yell and hitting the floor, a beeping noise started going off in the room, followed by the words, "An emergency is happening in your building. Please evacuate at the nearest exit," and accompanied by flashing lights. The guy is having a seizure on the floor, so we're all focused on getting him help. A campus police officer comes in and tells us the rest of the science buildings have already evacuated due to the fire alarm. Most of us leave to give some space to the people helping the guy. While outside, we're talking amongst ourselves, absolutely baffled by the coinciding events we just witnessed. Did the flashing of the alarm trigger epilepsy? No, because he was already on the floor by the time the lights kicked in. Was there some kind of sensor on him that was alerted when his body was experiencing an emergency? No, because it was his first seizure. Just reading it might sound lame, but witnessing and working out what was happening in real time was just eerie. Case file number 1085, written by Eaton Beeve. On a dark winter night, a mysterious voice saved a child's life. I'm a firefighter, and we got a call for an overdose around 3 a.m. to a rough part in our district in the middle of winter.
What's the emergency? Hi,
Unfortunately, the patient was long gone, and her dealer, or whatever, found her like that when he dropped some stuff. As we were packing up our stuff, mind you, this is an absolutely trashed mobile home. I heard something down the hall that said,
"Lights."
I asked my partner if he said anything, as it was just him and me cleaning up, and he said no. I walked to the far end of the trailer, where I heard it, and shined my flashlight. I get a reflection out of the window. They have a small tool shed, and it has a flickering light. It piqued my interest, so my partner and I went out there. We heard crying and noticed the door is padlocked. We cut it, and this little 6-year-old girl was in there.
Mommy? Mommy, where are you? I'm scared.
She said her mom puts her in there when she gets mad at her. She said she got scared when she heard the sirens and didn't know what to do. To this day, I have no idea what happened or where the voice came from, but I'll take the win on it. What happened after? My partner and I took her to the children's hospital closest to us, and we wrote our report and ate chips and a sandwich we took from the lounge while they called a social worker. She was a really sweet girl. The voice we had heard saying lights was not a little girl's voice. I 100% thought it was my partner since it sounded like a guy. Case file number 1086, written by Robot Undies. My cat stole my baby's clothes in the middle of the night. I have a 15-week-old baby who woke up for a 4 a.m. feed and changed just now. My cat followed us into the kitchen and started eating his food very loudly next to us as I was putting some fresh pajamas on the baby. These PJs, like most baby PJs, have a little flap on the arm that folds over the hand to stop the baby scratching himself with the little razor blades he calls fingernails. Just as I am zipping the PJs up, the very noisy eating beside me just stops, and I'm aware of a very intense silence for a split second. Then I hear my cat stomping down the hallway towards us. I quickly turn to look and yep, no cat at the bowl. But there was no way he could have made it back to the hallway so quickly. I thought that was super weird, but then I look back down and go to fold the pajama flaps over the baby's hands, and there are none. The flap is gone. It's important to note that these PJs are new. I'd bought this one and only set a size bigger than he needed because his hands were too big for the flaps on the smaller PJs, and he's been getting a lot of scratches lately. I had also put them on earlier in the day to check that the flaps were actually big enough, and they fit perfectly, so I'm 100% certain that they were there. Bonus file written by Justin Nicole 777. I had a dream about my friend's death, and then this happened. This one is insane, and I'm still wrapping my head around it. It's been a long process of uncovering. It just came out of nowhere. I had a dream in April of 2021. It was nighttime, and a friend of mine was hovering in the sky above me. He was invisible, but I could sense that it was him. He was urgently asking me for help. He said, "I was murdered. I have been trying to contact someone, but no one can hear me. You're the only one spiritual enough for me to get through." I didn't understand how I could help him. I was at a loss of direction. The confusion caused me to wake up. It was an extremely odd dream that I've never experienced before. It definitely perplexed me, but I wrote it off as a really weird dream and ignored it. But then, about 3 to 7 days later, I got the news that he had passed away. Literally no one would tell me how he passed. I didn't want to be insensitive, so I didn't pry. I just waited patiently until maybe I would find out. But fast forward to October 10th, 2022. I finally decided to be more intrusive, respectfully, and messaged a friend on his Facebook that posted on his page that I didn't know personally, and I messaged a girlfriend of one of his good friends as well. I asked them if they had happened to know how he passed. I'll copy and paste what the guy friend told me. Good morning. He went to a desert party and overdosed on bad substances. They believed foul play was suspected. There is an investigation to figure out what really happened. I tried to find out more, but I had no luck. Therefore, it was difficult to talk to the people face to face. Then I'll copy and paste what the girlfriend of a good friend of his said. It's really intense. He was on psychedelics and used a bottle to reach the end. It was at a party in the mountains and everyone was flucked up, so by the time he got to the hospital it was too late. Apparently it was a shady crowd, but I'm not sure who. Demonic crap for sure. Honestly, I sensed the people he was around were dark. This feedback from them makes me believe that he truly did visit me, and that it wasn't just an odd dream. It makes me believe he probably was murdered, because he specifically told me so. I'm getting the vibe everyone was on bad substances and foul play happened. And I'm also getting the feeling that maybe he was asking me for help because he just passed. Maybe he was afraid and desperate to get back to his body, I don't know. But I like to think that it just happened, but that after he visited me, that he went into the light and it's just in a good place now. I don't know how the afterlife works, but this is really selling me on the afterlife for sure. What are your guys' thoughts? Anyone else experience something similar? Case notes for file 1077, the literal elephant in the room. This makes me want to go rewatch Jumanji. Fantastic classic movie. Not the remake, I didn't see that one. I don't know if it's good, but the original is just classic. All I can think is some kind of time perception anomaly is involved. But even that, I don't think there were elephants in Texas back in the day. Pretty sure no. Maybe I'm wrong. Outside of that, maybe it wasn't a real elephant. Maybe it was some class project that they were doing in the church. They were building like a mock elephant for some maybe parade. Case notes for file 1078. Parallel universe or payment error. So this could certainly be some sort of accounting error on their end. Even if you physically go into the branch, human error can occur. They have to input that you paid in cash, and then maybe if they didn't update it or there was an error on their program and their servers or something, it can happen. That said, the universe isn't as stable as we all like to pretend it is, that's clear. There are cases where people are paying for groceries and somehow the card in their pocket is charged, even though it's not the one they're actually tapping on the payment processor. The information or code may be slightly jumbled up, enough for the instability to manifest in little tech glitches like this. Case notes for the bonus file. I had a near-death experience at 15. This is what I saw. So lucid awareness of astral projection, where your soul detaches from your body, typically does happen when one is dreaming. The soul is permitted to detach from the mind, but still maintains a loose connection to it. Obviously it returns. It's incredible just from imagining it per people's descriptions. I mean, I hope one day I experience it too. And it sounds like in this case, I think people describe it as like an ego death, where it's just the grand appreciation of the universe and our little tiny position in it. You know, it's not to diminish us, it's just to have greater perspective, I think is the word. Yeah. It's amazing. Now time for the quote of the day. You cannot plow a field by turning it over in your mind. To begin. Gordon B. Hinckley. If you have any kind of passion project or hobby, or anything you're taking that you want to take a step further, just do me a favor. Set aside 30 minutes a day to devote to it. And maybe it won't pan out, but just devote to it for, at least a month. Try it out, really focus on it. And then you've started. Maybe the field you're starting to plow isn't what you're going to want, or maybe you're planting corn, but eventually you want wheat. I don't know. But you'll never know unless you try. So try. Case notes are file 1079. The glitch that saved me $4.70 worth of loyalty bucks. This is such a powerful little story. And if there were higher level machinations involved, or if it's a 1 in a billion coincidence, either way, wow. A lot of wild coincidences do happen to us all the time that we don't really notice because their impact is kind of minor at most. In this case, the fact these loyalty points were for a gas station you never used before and just happened to be in that exact place, that's just pure happenstance. Did something ordain it? Because that seems so specific. And then of course, you end up being their legal counsel 20 years later. That's amazing. Maybe you were kind of influenced to that end because of the importance, the psychological impact of this event. I don't know if there's a higher power involved, or the simulation, or it's just a coincidence. Honestly, it doesn't matter to me. This is a great story. Case notes for the bonus file. The haunting of the historic Coffeehouse. How would I react to this? I'm thinking I would just be as speechless as you were. And I wouldn't have told my manager either, just in case. Are you crazy, dude? It's Christmas time. Let's not talk about spirits and all that. Is what the manager would probably have said, because most people are just normal. They don't want to think about supernatural stuff. Curious this occurred when the manager was so late, though. I don't know if it's spirit related. Why would they literally hold some Christmas party like that, these spirits? And the lights would have been visible by your manager who was approaching before you even turned around to see their headlights in the car. So they would have noticed that the lights were on and wondered how did you turn them on if it was locked. They wouldn't have reacted the way they did, the manager. So maybe it's just multiversal peering. In another world, perhaps a copy of yourself and your manager were in early and indeed feeling oh so festive. And now time for the quote of the day. It is often said that before you die, your life flashes before your eyes. It is in fact true. It's called living. Terry Pratchett. Indeed, our life is flashing before our eyes right now. Buffered reality or not, it's flashing at 1 second per second. And yet, did it already happen? Are we actually living it the first time now? Or are we just living a replay? Either way, this is our life, and we're seeing what's happening. And it's pretty interesting, isn't it? I have no complaints. Well, maybe that I can't eat unlimited chocolate without getting fat. That's one complaint. Needs an update. Case notes for file 1080. The Pale Lady of the Desert. The interesting detail here that intrigues me is how you contacted the Highway Patrol the first time, and they admitted that there were tons of reports pouring in about this pale lady, and the second time you called them, there were none? Did the operators get orders not to discuss it? A conspiracy of sorts? Or was it just a different timeline? Or a different universe? The world isn't ready to learn about it on the mainstream level. So, that this was a possession perhaps, or was it a woman out of phase from a different universe? Either way, I could see that there would be orders from higher up saying, kill this story, don't talk about it to anyone who calls in, no news, nothing like that. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to do, so I could see that because the information clearly was there the first time, just no one was told not to speak of it. Case notes are file 1081, lunch and credit. So this would be a localized time pocket, a rewinding within that localized confine. Like the dog on the bed with kibble, one story I read with that, where the dog jumps on the bed, there was kibble there, it falls off, and then the person sees it rewind back. Time resets back just a few seconds, maybe a minute or two. I think this may occur more often than we realize, but given that it's just a few seconds, maybe a minute at most, you'd never know. I mean, no one's keeping track of time that specifically, unless they're literally keeping track of time for some reason, like a stopwatch or something. But even then, a few seconds, you wouldn't really realize that. You know, if you're keeping track of 5 minutes on a timer, maybe for an exercise set, and then time rewinds back 20 seconds, would you even realize that? I mean, maybe you'd think, oh, seems like it's taking a bit longer, but that's all you'd think. Unless there was some physical event that you saw rewind or repeat, like in this case. You'd never know. It's just too small a chunk of time. So yeah, this may be happening all the time. Ironically. Case notes for file 1082. Encountering my doppelganger at the supermarket. So there are people with that kind of face. Everyone thinks they look like someone they know or saw before. It could be a doppelganger indeed, but my bet is maybe a general lookalike for the last time in the apartment. The thing that's really weird is how they all describe feeling ill, and that is indeed associated with doppelgangers. So it may actually have been a doppelganger. And at least the first two stories. They're not just copies of persons or astral projection, they're manifestations in the world that don't belong, and I think anyone that encounters them, even if it's not your own, if it's someone else seeing it, they still know it's not right, maybe because they lack a soul or something like that. The vibes are all wrong. And now time for the quote of the day. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou. And yeah, this is true. You know, it can be difficult for people like myself who are very logical, who are very direct. I'm not really thinking exactly of feelings. Not that I discount them, it's just not my main focus. I try to make sense of things. But I think sometimes it can come across as cold or unfeeling. It's not the intent. But the quote I think is very true. I mean, it's the reality of how people associate and make friends and all that, or even like in the workplace. It's not necessary. I mean, how you perform is important, but if you're always invisible or you're not social enough, it'll be harder to advance and make friends and network and all that. So, I mean, we are social animals, right? Even if some people are more introverted or not as specialized in socializing, it's the reality of humanity. Making people feel good is important. And I think, you know, even if you're not the most social person, just being kind is a good first step. Having empathy, trying to put yourself in their shoes or understand their viewpoint. It doesn't mean they're correct, but at least you're giving it an honest interpretation. Case notes for file 1083. How a door turned my peaceful night into a nightmare. So in all these instances, if we go with the idea that spirits are involved with all of our door shenanigans, what exactly are they doing? In the last story, did they manage to phase the deadbolt metal itself through the door? So just the metal was taken unfazed, the one that actually latches into the door frame with the deadbolt. So then it opened, but there was still a force required to push the door open. Was there an actual gust of wind in that moment? But even if that's the case, again, what is the point of all that? Another peculiarity, especially in motives. Maybe it's not spirits and simply instability in the laws of physics, which I postulate is increasing. Hell, there was a family that experienced a momentary gravity turnoff. Their entire dining room table floated for like a second or two, and everyone there saw it, and then just crashed back down. So if things like that can happen, why not a tiny deadbolt just phasing through? Kinda makes more sense than spirits in this case because I don't see the motive. The first step when trying to solve a case is motive, right? Motive means opportunity. Well, maybe they have the opportunity and means, but I just don't see the motive. Unless they're just trying to prank you, scare you, maybe. It's not impossible, it just doesn't quite fit enough for me. Case notes are file 1084. Strange coincidence or freak accident. Physics lab experiment goes wrong. So it's cause and effect breaking. Makes you wonder if his brain decoded information that was forward in time subconsciously, which then triggered the epilepsy attack. So, if it was all subconscious, he would never have been aware, since even if our brains are able to gather and process that information about the future, the buffered reality, it's not until it's filtered down to our conscious player view that we know it, the part that we're actually experiencing sentience of the world, the driver at the helm. If all the crew doesn't pass the information to the captain at the helm, then it may as well not exist. Per him. Maybe they were able to sound the alarm but not give the information as to what the hell was going wrong. So I guess I wouldn't chalk this up to a coincidence. It seems too improbable. Now time for the quote of the day. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Like, oh, I'm going to jump into this pool, but the water's too cold. And then you do it, and yeah, it's not pleasant, but then it's over and it's not as nearly as bad as you think it is. Or going up to the girl to ask her out, generally it's perfectly fine. Nothing bad happens. Even if she rejects you, it's not the end of the world, Try not to live in your fear too much. Just try things out, take chances. Yeah, maybe it'll fail, maybe spectacularly, but it's much less likely to be a spectacular, catastrophic failure than just something that didn't work out and you move on and that's it. No big deal. Case notes are file 1085. On a dark winter night, a mysterious voice saved a child's life. So this is a genuine guardian angel story. I honestly think there was some force or entity, a will, a sentience involved, benevolent, that wanted to help save that precious baby girl with a full life ahead of her. And I don't think it was related to whoever died because, again, you said it was a male voice, not female. So dead of winter, freezing. She wouldn't have lasted the night, most likely, if that voice hadn't appeared from nowhere to alert you. Just incredible. To that mysterious voice, if you're God, the simulation developers, spirits, whoever it was, thank you. Case notes for file 1086. My cat stole my baby's clothes in the middle of the night. So cats are expert thieves, masterclass indeed, rivaling even raccoons. They get more credit than they deserve in their criminal level. But seriously, it may not be related to the cat. That was the distraction, pulling your attention away for the universe to go along with its shenanigans of de-rendering and not properly re-rendering an item. As disappearing objects almost never, I think. I only read one story out of hundreds where a person saw the vanishment with their own eyes. It never disappears in front of us. And I think even in that context, it wasn't like a visual sight. It was just like on his lap or something. So it was still something you think would be rendered, but he didn't see it with his own eyes disappear. Something about perception prevents it. It's like game code. Wherever you look has to be rendered, and then when you're not looking, it's off screen, it's de-rendered, but still kept in RAM so it can be quickly refreshed. Or not RAM, the video GPU memory, I believe. So it's very easily accessed, but it's a way to save on system resources, and it makes sense. If this is a simulation, you wouldn't render everything at the same time always, there's just too much. You'd only render the bits where people are actually interacting with it or are able to observe it. And then when people come close to it, then you bring it into memory and load it up. It makes much more sense, and it makes it much more conceivable that this is a simulation. If you're rendering everything at the scale, it's too detailed for it to be a simulation. Well, I think if everything is rendering at exactly the same time in the entire universe, just the planet alone is miraculous achievement. This level of detail, it's incredible. Case notes for the bonus file. I had a dream about my friend's death, and then this happened. So I just want to say I'm sorry for your loss. It's tragic. I'm always saddened when people turn to substances for support. They don't have what they need from life itself. Maybe too scared to ask directly for help, mending, therapy, and so on. But then they have a bad batch and it just ends, even by accident or indeed maybe targeted. It's just terrible. As far as it came into your dream state, I believe he did. Dreaming isn't when our minds are shut off. I think it's when our minds are most active and most searching, kind of like when you prompt your phone to scan for Bluetooth or Wi-Fi signals. It's searching for that connection. And your friend's soul could see this. I wonder what it would look like. As if you were glowing available? No matter. At least you got to see him one more time. As far as his life, he's likely in a parallel universe. His sentience, anyways. Completely unaware he perished in the original world he was from. And now time for the quote of the day. Happiness is to be found along the way, not at the end of the road. Robert Upadegraph. I probably butchered his last name there. But yes, if your whole goal in life is to reach the end, a certain achievement, and you're only going to be happy when you reach that achievement, well, if it's a lifetime achievement, you're going to reach it and then you have like 5 minutes and then it's over. The game's done. That doesn't seem practical. You're going to have like 5 minutes when you achieve something, even if it doesn't take your lifetime. And then you're just going to say, well, what's the next goal? And I'm not saying don't have goals, but I'm just saying enjoy the process of getting there, every step you take. Instead of that end point, enjoy both of it. Enjoy the reward, the achievement, and the process to get there. Because the process is most of your life. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony, signing off.